always knew there was something different about me. Growing up, I never quite fit in with the other boys. I wasn't interested in sports or playing rough like they were. Instead, I found myself drawn to dolls and playing dress-up with my sister's clothes. As I got older, I began to feel even more out of place. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin and often found myself daydreaming about what it would be like to be a woman. I tried my best to ignore these thoughts and feelings, but they never really went away. It wasn't until I was in my 30s that I finally decided to explore my gender identity. I started cross-dressing in secret, buying clothes and makeup online and hiding them from my wife. It was a small step, but it felt liberating to finally embrace a part of myself that I had been suppressing for so long. Eventually, I confided in my wife about my cross-dressing. To my surprise, she was supportive and even offered to help me with my makeup and styling. It was a huge relief to have someone in my life who accepted me for who I was. But things took an unexpected turn when I visited a new doctor for a routine physical. During the exam, he noticed that my hormone levels were off and recommended that I get tested for a condition called hypogonadism, which is a hormonal disorder that can cause low testosterone levels. To my surprise, the test results showed that I did indeed have hypogonadism. The doctor recommended that I start taking estrogen to help balance out my hormones. At first, I was hesitant. I had never considered taking hormones before and wasn't sure how it would affect my body or my identity. But the more I thought about it, the more intrigued I became. I did some research online and read about how estrogen could potentially help me feel more feminine. It could soften my skin, give me curves, and even reduce my body hair. I felt a sense of excitement and curiosity that I had never felt before. So I made the decision to start taking estrogen. It was a big step, but I felt like it was something I needed to do in order to fully explore my gender identity. I started taking the pills every day, excited to see what changes would come. At first, I didn't notice any major changes. But after a few weeks, I started to feel different. My skin felt softer, and I noticed that I was growing breasts. I felt a sense of excitement and euphoria that I had never experienced before. But as the changes continued, I began to feel a sense of anxiety and uncertainty. Was I really ready to fully transition? Was this what I truly wanted, or was I just caught up in the moment? These thoughts consumed me. I knew that I couldn't just stop taking the estrogen, but I also wasn't sure if I was ready to take the next step and have surgery. I felt like I was stuck in a limbo, unsure of what the future held. But one thing was certain. My life was about to change in a big way. As the changes brought on by the estrogen continued, I found myself becoming increasingly anxious and uncertain about what the future held. My breasts were growing larger every day, and I was starting to feel more and more feminine. At first, I had been excited about these changes. I had always felt like something was missing from my life, and I thought that maybe transitioning was the answer. But now that it was actually happening, I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. I began to doubt myself and my decision to take estrogen. Was I really ready to fully embrace my feminine side? What would my friends and family think? And most importantly, what would happen to my marriage? My wife had been supportive of my cross-dressing, but I wasn't sure how she would feel about me fully transitioning. Would she still love me as a woman, or would she see me as someone completely different? These thoughts and fears consumed me, and I found myself becoming more and more withdrawn from the world around me. I stopped going to work, stopped seeing my friends, and spent most of my days holed up in my room, trying to make sense of everything. One day, my wife came into the room and found me crying. She sat down next to me and asked what was wrong. I hesitated at first, unsure of how to express my feelings. Finally, I told her everything. I told her about my doubts and fears, and how I wasn't sure if I was ready to fully transition. She listened patiently, holding my hand as I cried. When I was finished, she looked at me with a sad expression on her face. "I had a feeling this might happen," she said. "I know how much you've been struggling with this." I was surprised to hear her say this. "What do you mean?" she sighed. "I just know how hard it is to figure out who you are. And I know that this decision is not an easy one." I felt a sense of relief knowing that she understood. But I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. "I just don't know if I'm ready to fully transition," I said. "I don't know if I can handle the changes." My wife nodded. "I understand. But I also want you to know that I love you, no matter what. Whether you're a man or a woman, I will always be here for you." Her words brought tears to my eyes. I had always felt like I was alone in this journey, but now I knew that I had someone by my side who loved me unconditionally. We sat there for a while longer, talking about what the future might hold. We didn't come to any conclusions, but just having someone to talk to made all the difference. In the following days, I started to come out of my shell a bit more. I started seeing my friends again and even went back to work. But I still felt uncertain about what the future held. Every day, I looked in the mirror and saw a different person staring back at me. My face was softer, my skin was smoother, and my breasts were growing larger by the day. I didn't know who I was anymore, and it scared me. But despite all of my doubts and fears, one thing remained constant: my love for my wife. She was the one thing in my life that I was sure of, and I knew that as long as she was by my side, everything would be okay. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew that I wasn't alone. And that gave me the strength to face whatever lay ahead. As the weeks went by, I continued to struggle with my feelings about transitioning. I couldn't shake the doubts and fears that consumed me, and I felt like I was in a constant state of limbo. My wife tried to be supportive, but I could tell that she was getting frustrated with my indecisiveness. She wanted me to be happy, but she also wanted me to make a choice. One day, she sat me down and said, "We need to talk about this. I love you, but I can't keep watching you suffer like this. You need to make a decision." I knew she was right. I couldn't keep living like this, in a constant state of flux. But I still didn't know what I wanted. "I just don't know if I'm ready to fully transition," I said. "I don't know if I can handle all of the changes." My wife nodded. "I understand. But you also can't keep living in this in-between state. It's not fair to you, or to me." I knew she was right. I needed to make a decision, one way or the other. But I was still so scared. What if I make the wrong choice? I asked. What if I regret it? My wife put her hand on mine. There are no wrong choices, only different paths. And no matter what path you choose, I will be here for you. Her words gave me the courage to finally make a decision. I knew that I couldn't keep living like this, in a constant state of indecision. I needed to choose one path or the other, and live with the consequences. And so, I made the decision to fully transition. It wasn't an easy choice, but I knew deep down that it was the right one for me. My wife was hesitant at first, but she soon came around. She supported me every step of the way, helping me find a good surgeon and providing emotional support when I needed it most. The surgery was scheduled for a few months later. I spent those months preparing for the transition, buying clothes and makeup, and practicing my feminine voice. I also started seeing a therapist, who helped me work through some of the emotional issues that came with such a big change. As the surgery date approached, I became increasingly nervous. I knew that there was no going back, that once the surgery was done, I would be a woman for the rest of my life. But I also knew that it was what I wanted. I was tired of living my life as a man, feeling like something was missing. I was ready to fully embrace my feminine side and become the person I was always meant to be. The day of the surgery was a blur of emotions. I was scared, excited, and anxious all at the same time. My wife held my hand as they wheeled me into the operating room, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The surgery itself was a success. When I woke up, I was in a lot of pain, but I also felt a sense of relief. The surgery was over, and I was finally on the path to becoming the person I had always known I was meant to be. The recovery was long and difficult, but my wife was there for me every step of the way. She helped me with everything, from changing bandages to learning how to walk in heels. As the weeks went by, I started to see the changes in my body. My breasts were fully formed, and my hips were curvier. I also started to notice a change in the way people treated me. Strangers would address me as "ma'am," and I could see the confusion in their eyes when they realized. After my surgery, life as a woman began to feel more and more natural to me. I had spent so many years suppressing my feminine side that it was a relief to finally be able to express myself fully. Of course, there were challenges along the way. Learning how to do my makeup and style my hair was a steep learning curve, and I often felt self-conscious when I was out in public. But my wife was always there to support me, offering words of encouragement and helping me perfect my makeup skills. And as time went on, I began to feel more confident in my new identity. One of the biggest challenges was adjusting to the way that people treated me. As a man, I had never really thought about the privilege that came with being male. But as a woman, I was suddenly aware of how differently people treated me. Men would leer at me in public, or make inappropriate comments. Women would sometimes be dismissive of me, or assume that I wasn't capable of doing certain things because of my gender. It was frustrating and disheartening, but my wife helped me navigate these situations. She taught me how to stand up for myself, and how to assert my boundaries in a way that felt safe and appropriate. One of the things that helped me the most was finding a community of other trans women. I started attending support groups and making connections with other people who had gone through similar experiences. These friendships were invaluable to me, as they provided a safe space where I could be myself without fear of judgment or rejection. It was also inspiring to see how other trans women had overcome their own challenges and flourished in their new identities. As I continued to adjust to life as a woman, I also began to think about my future. I had always dreamed of having a career in science, but I knew that being a woman in a male-dominated field would come with its own set of challenges. But I was determined to pursue my dreams, no matter what obstacles I might face. I enrolled in a graduate program in biology, and threw myself into my studies with renewed passion. It wasn't always easy, but I was proud of myself for pursuing my dreams and refusing to let my gender hold me back. And as I became more confident in my new identity, I found that I was able to achieve things that I never thought were possible before. Of course, there were still setbacks and challenges along the way. But I had come so far already, and I was determined to keep pushing forward no matter what. As time went on, I became more and more comfortable with my new identity as a woman. I had learned to navigate the challenges that came with being a trans woman, and had found a community of people who accepted and supported me for who I was. My career in science was thriving, and I was proud of the work that I was doing. I had even started to speak publicly about my experiences as a trans woman, hoping to inspire others to embrace their own true identities. But despite all of the progress that I had made, there were still moments of doubt and insecurity. Sometimes, I would look in the mirror and wonder if I was truly living up to my new identity. Other times, I would feel overwhelmed by the weight of people's expectations of me. But my wife was always there to support me, reminding me of how far I had come and encouraging me to keep pushing forward. And over time, I began to embrace my new life more fully. I started wearing dresses and skirts more often, experimenting with different styles and colors. I even started to enjoy shopping for clothes and accessories, something that I had always avoided before. And as I embraced my femininity more fully, I found that I was able to connect with people in a new and meaningful way. Women would compliment me on my outfits or ask for beauty tips, and men would treat me with a newfound respect and admiration. But perhaps the biggest change was the way that I saw myself. I had spent so many years trying to suppress my feminine side, convinced that it was something to be ashamed of. But now, I saw that my femininity was a source of strength and power. I was proud of the woman that I had become, and I was determined to use my experiences to help others. I started volunteering with a local LGBT organization, advocating for the rights of trans people and providing support to those who were struggling with their own identities. And as I worked to build a better world for myself and others, I knew that I had finally found my true calling in life. I had been given a second chance to live my life authentically, and I wasn't going to waste it. Looking back on my journey, I realized that the most important thing that I had learned was to never give up on myself. No matter how difficult things seemed, I knew that I had the strength and resilience to keep going. And as I looked towards the future, I felt hopeful and excited about all of the possibilities that lay ahead. I was living proof that it was never too late to become the person you were meant to be. The end.